I didn't pick up Animal Farm because I was looking for something deep or life-changing. Honestly, I chose it because it was short. I was in that phase right after college where my brain felt tired of theories, manifestos, and people arguing about justice online as if they own the truth. A professor I respected once said, almost casually, "If you want to understand power, read Animal Farm." That stuck with me. So one night, thinking it would be a quick, almost childish read, I opened the book. I had no idea it would quietly dismantle some of the beliefs I was most proud of. At first, it really does feel simple. Talking animals, a farm, a clear villain in the humans. I remember smiling, thinking this was almost too obvious. The early chapters describe the animals listening to Old Major's speech, and I felt myself agreeing with every word. His vision of equality, shared labor, and freedom sounded exactly like the ideals I had defended in debates for years. It felt comforting to see those ideas laid out so clearly, without academic jargon or political labels. That was the first trap the book set for me. What made it unsettling wasn't what happened later, but how reasonable everything felt at the beginning. The rebellion doesn't start with violence or cruelty. It starts with hope. The animals believe they're building something fair, something that will finally correct old injustice. I realized, a little uncomfortably, how much I wanted them to succeed. Orwell doesn't rush this part. He lets you sit in that optimism, almost enjoy it, the way the animals do when they rename the farm and write the 7 commandments on the wall. And then there was this quiet thought that crept in while I was reading. Why does this feel so familiar? I had seen this pattern before, not on farms, obviously, but in student groups, movements, even organizations that promised equality and transparency. The book wasn't attacking ideals themselves. It was questioning what happens after the speeches end and the real work begins. By the time I finished the first chapters, I understood something important. Animal Farm wasn't going to argue with me directly. It wasn't going to tell me I was wrong. It was going to let me agree with everything at first, so that when things started to shift, I wouldn't be able to look away. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be just a quick read. It was already changing how I looked at the word justice. What really pulled me in was how Animal Farm spends so much time on the beginning, on that fragile moment right after the rebellion, when everything still feels possible. Orwell doesn't rush past it. He shows the animals cleaning the farm, destroying symbols of human control, rewriting the rules of their world. I remember reading those chapters slowly, almost enjoying the calm after the storm. It felt like watching a dream being carefully assembled. The 7 commandments were the moment that stuck with me the most. They're written so clearly, so confidently, painted on the wall as if that alone could make them permanent. All animals are equal. No animal shall harm another. No animal shall become like a human. At that point in the book, I trusted those words. I didn't question who wrote them or who would enforce them. I just assumed fairness could be preserved if it was written down clearly enough. That assumption says a lot about who I was back then. The pigs, especially Snowball, are presented almost like necessary guides in these early chapters. They explain ideas, organize work, help the others understand what the revolution means. And I agreed with it. Someone has to lead, right? Someone has to interpret the rules, manage the systems, make things efficient. Orwell makes this phase dangerously convincing. There's no obvious villain yet. No red flags waving in your face, just small, reasonable decisions that all seem to make sense in the moment. I remember one specific scene that bothered me more than I expected: the milk. The cows are milked, the buckets are left there, and when the animals return later, the milk is gone. It's barely a paragraph, almost an afterthought, but it lingered in my mind. No explanation at first, no debate, just absence. And I realized how often unfairness enters systems quietly, without announcements or confrontations. It doesn't arrive screaming, it just disappears into routine. What unsettled me was how easy it was to justify everything. The animals are working harder than ever, but they're also proud. They believe they're working for themselves now. That sense of ownership masks exhaustion. I had felt that before in my own life, giving more and more energy to causes and groups because I believed in the mission, not stopping to ask who was benefiting most. By the end of these early chapters, I wasn't angry. I wasn't suspicious yet. I was invested, and that was the problem. Animal Farm made me realize how the most dangerous systems don't start with cruelty. They start with hope, shared purpose, and just enough trust to keep everyone moving forward without asking the wrong question. The shift doesn't happen all at once. That's what disturbed me most as I moved deeper into Animal Farm. There isn't a single dramatic moment where everything breaks. Instead, power slides quietly from one place to another, and by the time you notice, it's already settled. The pigs don't seize control with force at first. They take it by positioning themselves as interpreters of truth. Napoleon's rise felt especially uncomfortable to read. Unlike Snowball, he isn't charismatic or idealistic. He's quiet, calculating, patient. While Snowball talks about plans and progress, Napoleon focuses on control. The moment Snowball is chased away by the dogs, it feels shocking, but also inevitable. I remember closing the book for a second after that scene because suddenly the farm felt different, colder, more rigid. It was no longer about debate or ideas. It was about authority. What really unsettled me was Squealer. He doesn't rule, he explains. He doesn't command, he reassures. Every time something feels off, he's there with numbers, logic, and fear. Less food is somehow more food. Harder work is freedom, and if anyone doubts it, there's always the same threat lurking beneath the surface. Do you want the humans to come back? That question becomes a weapon. Reading it, I realized how often fear is used not to protect people but to silence them. Then come the changes to the commandments. They're subtle, almost laughably small. An extra word here, a clarification there. The animals don't remember the original versions clearly, so they doubt themselves instead of the system. That detail hit me hard. Orwell wasn't suggesting that people are stupid. He was suggesting that exhaustion, repetition, and authority can erode memory itself. When you're tired and dependent, certainty becomes a luxury. The pigs walking on two legs is the final image that sealed everything for me. By then, it's no longer shocking. It's almost expected. The rules that once defined equality have been rewritten so many times that they no longer mean anything. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. When I read that line, I didn't feel surprise. I felt recognition. That's when Animal Farm stopped being a story about animals entirely. It became a mirror. I saw how easily power can disguise itself as necessity, how language can be bent until truth becomes flexible, and how people can participate in their own silence without realizing it. Orwell wasn't warning about monsters. He was warning about systems that feel normal right up until the moment you realize you no longer recognize yourself inside them. There was a moment while reading Animal Farm when the story stopped feeling distant and started feeling personal. It happened when the animals began to doubt their own memories. They weren't sure if the commandments had changed or if they had simply remembered them wrong. And instead of questioning the pigs, they questioned themselves. I remember pausing there, feeling strangely exposed because I had done that exact thing in my own life. I thought about meetings I'd been part of, groups where the original goals slowly shifted, where promises were reframed instead of openly broken. Someone would say, "That was never exactly what we meant," and everyone else would nod, not because it felt right, but because disagreeing felt exhausting. Reading those chapters, I realized how familiar that quiet surrender was. It wasn't fear that stopped people from speaking. It was fatigue. Boxer's character hit me the hardest. His loyalty, his strength, his endless willingness to work harder whenever something went wrong. "I will work harder" becomes his solution to everything. And for a long time, the book makes you admire him. I admired him too, but then it became painful. Boxer trusted the system so deeply that he never allowed himself to question it. Even when things clearly got worse, he believed the problem was his own effort, never the leadership above him. That was when I saw myself and people I knew in him. Good people who believe that if something isn't working, the answer must be personal sacrifice, not structural change. The idea that the system itself could be flawed feels almost disloyal. Orwell doesn't mock that mindset. He shows how it gets exploited. When Boxer is finally taken away under the lie that he's going to be helped, I felt angry in a very quiet way. Not shocked, not surprised, just angry at how predictable it was. The pigs didn't need violence anymore. They needed trust, and they already had it. That realization stayed with me long after I closed the book. By this point, Animal Farm wasn't teaching me about politics or history. It was forcing me to look at how easily responsibility gets pushed downward, how often loyalty is rewarded with silence instead of protection. I stopped thinking about revolutions and started thinking about everyday power. Managers, leaders, movements, institutions. That chapter didn't change my opinions overnight. It changed how I recognize patterns. It taught me that the most dangerous moment isn't when oppression begins, but when people convince themselves that questioning it would somehow make them the problem. By the time I finished Animal Farm, I wasn't left with a dramatic sense of outrage. What I felt was quieter and heavier than that. It was clarity. The book didn't tell me to reject ideals or stop believing in equality. What it showed me was how fragile those ideals become when they're handed over to unchecked authority. Orwell wasn't saying revolutions are pointless. He was saying that vigilance matters more than intention. The final chapters are devastating precisely because nothing feels dramatic anymore. The animals don't revolt again. They don't wake up. They just adjust. The pigs become indistinguishable from the humans they replaced. And the rest of the animals accept it because resistance now feels impossible. That ending haunted me. Not because it was shocking, but because it felt honest. Power doesn't always end in chaos. Sometimes it ends in resignation. What stayed with me most was that Animal Farm never asks who starts with bad intentions. It asks who benefits when no one is paying attention anymore. The pigs don't betray the revolution overnight. They redefine it slowly until words like equality and freedom mean whatever those in charge say they mean. And once language is controlled, behavior follows. After reading the book, I started noticing how often rules change without discussion, how often leaders explain instead of listen, how often fear is disguised as protection. I stopped assuming that good outcomes naturally follow good ideas. I started asking harder questions about accountability, transparency, and memory. Who writes the rules? Who enforces them? And who benefits when they change? If you've ever believed deeply in a cause, a group, or a leader, this book will probably make you uncomfortable. And I think that's the point. Animal Farm doesn't want blind agreement. It wants awareness. It wants you to stay awake even after the speeches are over. If you've read this book, I'd honestly love to know what stayed with you the most. And if you haven't, but this story sounds familiar in ways you didn't expect, maybe it's worth giving it a chance. If this kind of reflection is something you want more of, feel free to subscribe or share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Some stories don't entertain, they transform. This was one of them.